I'm ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. My name is Matthew McLaughlin,
I'm Daniel Sander.
and we have some notes for
The Social Network.
The Social Network is the best rowing movie ever made. By far. So tonight we watched The Social Network, and this is a movie talking about how Facebook was founded and the problems that they had going into it. It stars Jesse Eisenberg and what was his name?
Andrew Garfield.
Yes, Andrew Garfield before Spider-Man. What did you like? What did you dislike?
Absolutely. I just want to say, we went back in time a little bit. This was a movie that you had seen before, right?
Yeah, that's right. I've seen The Social Network a few times before.
Okay. So Matthew's seen it before. I had never seen it before. It's one that's on my list. I love David Fincher. So, things. Do you want to start with like or dislike? Or just general impressions?
Let's start with general impressions. Let's start with you because this is the first time you've seen it.
Sure. General impressions were really good. I could see why it won the Oscars it won. I can see why it's in high esteem by a lot of directors. It was a cool story, and it was told in the usual David Fincher fashion where it's kind of this almost like courtroom drama, but it's, jumping back and forth between past and present. I was riveted. It was riveting to me the whole time. I wouldn't say I was on the edge of my seat, but I was invested the whole time, which you kind of come to expect from David Fincher, and I loved it. I thought it was good.
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting rewatching a movie because I remember the first time that I watched it, man, I was like floored in the best way. Like I was so excited that I had just watched what I had watched that I took people's recommendation and actually saw it. And I remember absolutely wanting to delete Facebook afterwards.
Really?
I think everybody feels like that nowadays because this movie came out a few years ago.
2010, yeah.
2010. Oh my gosh, 14 years
It's been a
ago.
long time. So we're going right. We're going from modern to. There you go.
Yeah,
Decade
so
and a half.
the movie ends and it shows that that Facebook is worth what, 25 billion?
Something crazy, yeah.
What's it now?
Probably 100 billion or something.
Something like that. Something stupid.
Well, I'm curious if their claim at the end of the movie of him being the richest or the youngest
Billionaire.
youngest billionaire is still true. I don't know how old Zuckerberg is then.
Yeah, that's a good
He was
question.
in college in 2004. So I don't want to do math, but I'm curious if that holds up.
That's true. That's true.
So for you, how was it on a repeat viewing or several repeat viewings?
Yeah. This is probably my fifth time, and I think that when it comes to a David Fincher film like this, I think that I don't know. It's not that it lost anything, but it's not as shocking and as like over the top the more times that you watch it. It's still worth a watch, and I definitely enjoyed watching it, but it's not the same as the first few times. People get that excitement to be like, man, I would give anything to go see this for the first time. And I kind of feel that way with this movie.
Really?
Okay. At least tonight.
Do you feel like you picked up any? Because so that's one thing that David Fincher tends to be really good at is leaving nuggets for repeat viewings. Like one of my favorite movies of his is Seven, where it's a serial killer going off the seven deadly sins, and there are little details. I've watched it numerous times. I love it. I love his horror movies, his thrillers. Zodiac's a great one. Gone Girl. And every time you watch it, you're rewarded with a little bit of extra information on how something was done or why something was done. Do you feel like that's any bit the case for this one? Or is this kind of a unique thing for Fincher to not necessarily do that?
No, I think he has. It's just that I think I was looking for that probably the other 3 times that I've seen it. Again, I think that I've probably just seen it too many times. So I've like caught up on all the things and I know what's going to happen and all that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think that there are those things. It's just I've seen it so many times at this point.
Gotcha.
As far as the movie itself, it's fantastic. For anybody who is able to go into it the right mindset that you're going to have to pay attention, I would say that he sets that up in the best way possible from the opening scene. You have to be paying attention because you can almost not hear what they're saying, It's a tricky thing to actually hear what they're saying in the opening scene, so you kind of have to lean in. You have to pay attention to what's going on. And I think that was really appropriate to begin with Zuckerberg being broken up with.
I think so. I think so. Well, and it works both in Jesse Eisenberg's favor, being someone who is just that way, that is actually has OCD and is that intense, that works out really well. And I'm just curious how long the script was. I don't know if this is true or not, but I believe, if I remember my little facts about this movie, that the script was like 150 pages long, and the studio was like, hell no, you need to keep this within 2 hours. And so I think David Fincher and the writer, because this one won an Oscar for best writing, for best adapted screenplay.
I'd say that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it was off a book too. I don't remember what the book was called, but it had to be.
Was it Facebook? Sorry.
Yes. I don't know what the book was, but it was a lot to cram in there. And I can only imagine that if they kept it as it was, David Fincher is such a perfectionist. I doubt he cut anything. That's why everyone had to speak so fast. Like that opening scene is just this dump of information. And there were several like it that just they worked. They were appropriate, but it was a lot of info. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot to tell in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I think that one of the key scenes is where they're in the club, and another scene where you can barely hear what they're saying. But I think that was totally on purpose. Like it was.
We'll have to come back to that. 'Cause
Okay,
that's
yeah.
But yeah, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, we can I guess begin earlier in the movie and kind of work towards that. But man, we all kind of have seen Zuckerberg as this humanoid, as this lizard guy testifying in front of the Supreme Court or something like that.
Yeah.
In front of the Supreme
Put on
Court.
trial for a while.
Yeah, we all know that side and everything.
It's like, ha, 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 human drink.
Yes, human drink water. Yes, and seeing the dark underbelly of his human side, being that he is a crazy betrayer, it's both not surprising and shocking that he has those human traits.
Right.
You know?
And I'm curious kind of where the dramatic line was drawn on this one. I would guess that it was pretty heavily embellished. And I would be
I think
curious to know, because Jesse Eisenberg played him very connivingly, where he was so calloused and deadpan, completely emotionless and like cutthroat and to the point. I obviously don't know Zuckerberg. I only know what I've seen. And obviously it's been a while since this happened. So I can't say anything with definitiveness, but I have a hard time believing awkward, brilliant, sure. But like cutthroat to that extent, maybe naive and cutthroat in that way of just not knowing what he was doing and, burning bridges. So I'm curious to know where there's the division between real life and this interpretation of the book, which was probably interpretation of whatever,
Yeah, it's funny because Jesse Eisenberg plays him with almost the cool nerd, a little bit.
Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what was the director for Superman v Batman? I'm sure that's what he was trying to go with Lex Luthor. That must be what happened.
Just play Zuckerberg in Batman v Superman. We're probably not wrong.
Yeah, and that didn't work. That's a different movie.
That's the funny thing. So that actually leads in perfectly about Jesse Eisenberg. He's a brilliant actor in the way that I think he can perpetually just play himself. Like he is always a fast talker, intense kind of character who's kind of quirky, sometimes brilliant. I mean, you see him in other films where it may be toned down or up, but the one thing I had a hard time believing is I just know he's been doing this press tour for this movie that he's been doing that he finished with Macaulay Culkin's brother, it's Kieran Culkin, or I don't know. Anyways, it's this buddy film where they're budding friends in a way, but they're polar opposites in the way that they operate and stuff. And so this press tour has been showing how absolutely OCD Jesse Eisenberg is. And the other guy is just completely lax all the time, and it drives them nuts. In real life, that was the point of the movie. And here it was interesting seeing someone who I know is actually OCD with Jesse Eisenberg playing someone who is obviously very calculated in the interests here, but with the clothing and with the lifestyle and I can only imagine on set he had such a hard time with that as someone who was kind of known for being OCD in the real world. I'm curious how that was for him to get into the shoes of
the flip-flops.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is you think about it now with Zuckerberg now, and he himself doesn't really match that from what you can tell. Like he is a very straight and narrow kind of guy, very put together, very, well kept, and just to a robotic fashion.
Do you think that his whole hot Zuck is real, or do you think that that's something a marketing ploy? What do you think?
I'm guessing there was a reason for it. I have no idea. That's a great question.
Because I heard that infamous photo that the beard was fake, as it turns out.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I saw that it was some sort of AI beard, because it's true. That's like the only picture with it, as far as I can tell. So yeah, I think it's just a marketing ploy.
thing?
Oh yeah, I mean he had to rebrand himself.
Fair.
He started
Well,
doing
and now he's
jujitsu and
back
wanting to
to
fight
this.
and everything.
That's fair. Because when you see him now, he's cool. He's personable. He's
Right.
a human. So I don't know. I can't speak much for the guy, but at least in terms for the movie, I thought it was an interesting interpretation for what I have seen of the guy as someone who doesn't know him and doesn't really want to. But yeah, an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, did you have expectations going into this movie?
I did. David Fincher is definitely one of my favorite directors. The lion's share of his movies I really enjoy. I didn't like Gone Girl as much as I wanted to, and that's one of the few that's like high esteem. He's really good at creating compelling stories with characters you don't necessarily like or are rooting for. It really is entirely more about the story and what's happening. I mean, really every movie I think about with him, from Fight Club to Zodiac to Seven to a lot of these. I mean, they're almost all psychological thrillers. He's definitely the master of thrillers. He's the master at telling stories kind of in an unconventional way that works, that's compelling, that's driving, that has momentum to it. Doesn't always have characters you like. And so going into it, I expected some of that. I wasn't sure how much Fincher I get. And this one was definitely a different path for him. It had the same types of things he always does, but it actually had comedy, which wasn't different.
Yeah.
And it was not quite as, obviously it wasn't, I would say it was kind of a thriller, but it wasn't really a thriller. It just was a different style for him, but I think it held up. I held it to a high standard. It met the high standard.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, especially about the comedy too. This movie, watching it again, I did forget how much really solid, good comedy is in here. It's not meant to be a funny movie, but it's not like it breaks the tension. It always has to do with it, and it always plays it really well. And I think that Andrew Garfield is one reason to thank for that.
Well, it's not a concept that has to be deep and dark and brooding like a lot of his other movies.
Right.
Like we're not dealing with serial killers, but we are dealing with
that we know of.
It's fair. We're lizard people. But we are dealing with a very psychological thing, and that's usually what he thrives in. He thrives with the things that make people tick, and especially like those types of conniving people, the people who are 30 steps ahead, or the people who are really hard to read and really hard to pin down. And so, I mean, he has the whole TV show on Netflix, Mindhunter, is all about FBI agents getting into the mindsets of killers.
That is one of my favorite shows. It needs a third season.
Netflix.
Come on.
I know you probably want to see this,
Please.
but Netflix, come on.
Please.
It was a slow burner, but it was so well written. And I think that's kind of at the heart of his movies, is he knows who to partner with to write a really, really, really compelling and tight script with a narrative that's interesting. And then he just fills everything out from there perfectly. And I think that's just kind of his strength as a director, his strength pulling this project around him, is that he just knows what he wants to the extent that he fleshes it out really intelligently. And so clearly this is an example of, even though it's maybe just more of a standard drama with bits of comedy, that it's no exception to the rest of his catalog. And the way that he makes movies is they're just so intentional, and they start with a really, really tight script, I'd say. And I mean, that's clear because that was one of the Oscars it won. So script writing, editing, and main theme. I thought the music one was weird, but those are the
kind of
three.
like the theme. That actually, you were asking about things that stuck out. That actually was one.
That stuck out more on this
The
one.
music stuck out more this time. It was one where there's not like a score like an Interstellar, or even like the classics like a Star Wars or an E.T. that it's like
Where it has a
memorable.
motif that's really
Right. But how it's used, every single scene, there is purpose behind it. Weirdly enough, I've always loved the rowing scene in this movie. I actually have gone so far.
montage.
It's so good. I've actually gone so far to say that the The Social Network is a better rowing movie than Boys in the Boats, because I was so disappointed with that movie. But
I
anyway,
never saw it, so yeah.
in this rewatching of it, that montage kind of stuck out. I think it's because I knew that song was coming, But what a good use of that song, I would say.
True.
The stylistic choices of making everything feel small and like so focused with that crazy shallow depth of field.
We'll have to bring that back in for cinematography because I agree. I have some cool thoughts on it too.
Oh, what
and
a good
using In the Hall
scene.
of the Mountain King was just kind of a quirky little
Yeah.
sound. Well, and talking to your point on music, I agree because I was thinking back on that. This was definitely one of the first David Fincher movies I've ever noticed music. He's not really
Yeah.
one to use music. He uses sound design well.
Yeah,
but
especially in
he's-
7.
Yeah, he's a very quiet. He has a very quiet sound mix in his movies. It's very much more about the dialogue.
Yeah, kind of real life.
Yeah. And so outside of maybe Fight Club, maybe some of those where he's using more rough and tumble music to kind of drive that point in. Every other movie he has kind of just has maybe like an atmospheric looming track to it. And this one had a distinguishable theme. And then when they came up, it's Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. The only thing I think I know them from is maybe two things are Pixar movies. They did I think they did Soul. I think parts of it, and then they did Soul. That is what I'm thinking of. Soul. It has a very similar style. It has kind of like this synthesized techie thing, which I thought was funny. I
Yeah.
think it's Soul, but has it's appropriate for this movie. I guess was the whole
Yeah.
thing of that. Yeah, and we noticed it.
One thing that I loved was that, for the whole movie, it was basically the whole beginning of the movie, talking about just the college side of it, when they're building Facebook, is when it's just Eduardo and Mark just talking about things and going through all the different challenges they need to overcome. Everything's good and there's different music that plays around with it. But as soon as what's the guy who started Napster? Justin Timberlake's character.
Yeah, Sean something. Sean.
Yeah, Sean. I don't even know. That's probably gonna piss the real one off. When they first go to that sushi place and he's late, and Eduardo's already pissed because he's trying to make this company happen and everything. As soon as Sean enters, this white noise, crazy music that just keeps everything going forward in an uncontrollable manner, showing that he has taken charge.
Yep.
What a great use of music.
Totally.
What a great use. It just shows how much power Sean had over Zuckerberg to where Eduardo, the co-founder, could do nothing. He took Mark Zuckerberg and just brought him along with him, and Eduardo was powerless to stop him, and that was shown through music, of all things.
True.
It was such a good use.
And yeah, I think that was. We can come back to it too a little bit, but just the use of sound in the movie was good. I mean,
Definitely.
you I guess spoke. I'll just say it now. You spoke on the nightclub scene. It was hard to tell just because we were watching on a TV with the built-in speakers, like how much of it was the TV and how much was. But I think you're right. I think it was intentional.
Yeah, it's slightly infamous for being loud and hard to understand.
Exactly. Yeah, you're having a conversation in a nightclub. So there were a couple scenes like that where it was hard to hear people.
Yeah.
And it's such a dialogue-driven movie that was tricky to navigate as a viewer.
Yeah, that one, because I've seen it a few different times, I appreciate that scene for what it is. Your first time viewer, what do you think? Because I can remember what I thought.
I totally understood what he was going for.
Nice.
So I appreciated it. I don't appreciate like muddy sound mixes like Tenet. Christopher Nolan is a grand example of it. The opening sequence is amazing. No. But this one made sense. And I don't know exactly what the intention was, if it was to show Zuckerberg's kind of distracted state as he's having this, conversation of a lifetime right here where, we're going to break you into another country. We're going to, grow this exponentially. If it is all kind of like, a sphere of distraction to kind of
I would
help.
say part of it is drowning everything else out. He's in California, he's alone, and the only person that he can hear literally is Sean sitting across the table from him and nothing else. And it's even hard to hear him, so to me it felt like Zuckerberg was being pulled into something that even he wasn't super sure on, but he just kind of went for it, and that nothing else in the world could touch him in that club scene.
Fair.
I kind of think that's what they were going for.
I could agree. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. I think that when it ties to kind of the whole thing that I thought was really cool, there were a lot of characters in this movie. There were a lot of character arcs. There were a lot of very delicate little details that could have been very easily lost. And I thought that it was a very impressive juggling act because at the end of the day, at the end of the movie, I would argue that Eduardo was just as much the main character as Zuckerberg. That
I would agree.
I would say that he was probably the main character. And when you think about every character that was tied in there, there were a lot of flashbacks and flash forwards and everything too, with a lot of different faces and a lot of different characters. I mean, the fact that we can use the characters' names, I think, speaks to the fact that obviously we know Zuckerberg, but that they were in a way memorable. But that they were written intentionally. That a lot of movies suffer from kind of that bloatware where you just have too many characters for the sake of having characters or for the sake of trying to complicate things. And in this, it was a very intentional needle being thread through all of it on why people like Rashida Jones, for example. She was the student lawyer who talked about the jury, like at the end of the movie, who delivered the final punch to him to inspire him to send his final like a friend request. I just because I know her from like Parks and Rec and stuff, she was a sore thumb to be like, why is she in this?
Yeah.
And well, she's there to be a physical talking point for him in those moments when the rest of the council has left and to deliver that kind of powerful blow. And so even her, everyone had a place in the movie, which was really cool, whether you liked them or not. And even like the Winklevoss twins were totally lost halfway through the movie. You're just done with them. And yet that's kind of synonymous with this movie, and they're not in it as much as you'd think.
And I would actually argue that the Winklevoss twins are the best example of how good they did at, or how appropriately they gave each character time. I mean, the fact that Armie Hammer, come on. The fact he was able to play two different people on the same set, basically switching clothes, and then the motion control rig goes again. And he's able to keep the different personalities of Cameron and Tyler completely separate. And you can actually tell a difference without him saying anything. Blows my mind. I mean, the last time, I can't think of any other time that a movie did twins so well, let alone twins by the exact same person.
And that speaks so well to Armie Hammer, first of all, absolutely, because you could tell who was talking and they had distinct personalities even as twins.
Yeah, one didn't give a crap, and the other one was, we are distinguished gentlemen of Harvard.
And the huge kudos to the director, too. I mean, the way that Fincher, it was kind of a match made in heaven for him, because the way he shoots is very simple and very intentional anyways. And so he wasn't aiming to over CGI it. I mean, there were obviously several shots in there where the both of them were in frame, and it was difficult to tell. Even for 2010, watching it in 2024, there were only a few, and it was the ones with motion where you could tell that they had the CGI face replacement over his double. But the rest of them, even when they were, counsel talking amongst everyone during like the litigation stuff, he was side by side with himself. It just was clever, clever camera work.
Yeah, this and The Parent Trap. That's the two.
That's valid. Well, just imagine planning that. This, like planning your shoot days, planning, acting that. And I think, again, this is another thing that I listened to a lot of stuff. So I think this was one of the situations where they filmed the movie through with him, or his scenes through to completion as one character, and then came back and filmed the other.
Oh, no kidding.
I think.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Because obviously they did the face replacement for the scenes where they had to, but I think that was the case, and it's because he insisted on keeping the characters separate like that. And honestly, more power to him. It was effective. So, smart direction, smart acting.
Talking about planning, we've both shot a couple commercials together, did some documentary stuff together, and some real estate where there's a certain level of planning with everything. And seeing a full movie come together that requires all of this to happen, and we've done a small snippet of it, oh man, it just impresses the hell out of me.
Especially one that jumps around as much as this one does, as effectively as this one does.
The fact that they're able to do that time jump from the beginning to the end, and work their way toward the big climax, just pulling that off is something that inspires me.
And they use it narratively to show that, at the beginning they do some jumps around where you're not really sure why. And then you're like, oh, this is why. So they use it narratively, but they don't even have to cue you in with like different color. Like, take, for example, Oppenheimer, where the flashbacks and flash forwards are colored to black and white.
Right.
And so this didn't even have to do that. It just was so well written and cut together. I mean, no wonder, again, that it won writing and editing, because it was very masterfully done.
You remember that scene where they're basically jumping back and forth between the two different lawsuits? and they basically make a joke out of it. Basically, they do some confusing jumps that make no sense. And then Zuckerberg says something about like, I'm in the middle of 2 lawsuits right now. It's hard to keep them straight. Gosh, that was so good. That's like, would you consider it
writing, reshoots? Yeah, where does that come from?
Do you think it's a fourth wall break?
David Fincher's very intentional, probably.
Probably. Because that is one of those that could be up for debate, whether or not that line is a fourth wall break. Because the editing, you don't see fourth wall breaks because of editing very often, but that might be an example of one.
I'll bet you it was deliberate.
Yeah.
He's such a deliberate director, so meticulously deliberate. I'm sure it was intentional.
Yeah. This was just a wonderful film to watch. It was, I really do enjoy some of the simple shot films, like what you're talking about.
Nothing complex.
The most crazy camera move that I can think of is when Zuckerberg is leaving his place to go back to his dorm and basically blog and everything. And it's very simple. It's that Zuckerberg is walking this way, the camera's here, and it starts to go and it pans and follows him and has kind of a move to it. That's like the only shot that I can think of.
Scene, which we can bring up on our cinema.
Right.
Yeah. I agree. There was nothing in here that was insane, and frankly, it didn't need to be.
I agree.
He didn't have to do anything but locked off shots, and that's what he did. He does them well. He blocks with intention. He lights with intention. He had his classic Fincher look. It had the kind of greenish yellow tint. It looked like a horror movie, but that's just his look.
Especially that first scene. Yeah. The first scene, how everything kind of blended together. You know, like the skin tones were very similar to the walls.
In the bar, you mean, in the pub with the girl?
Bar, yeah. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but there was some sort of feeling he was going for. I don't know if it was nostalgia or like a ruined memory or something like that he was going for.
Who his CP was and what they've done, because I'm guessing I think he works with a similar cinematographer, DP. So yeah, I'm curious what that is too, because I'm sure there's a reason. There always is with him, which is super cool. Yeah. He's kind of Kubrick-esque in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How real everything felt was really cool. Looked like they filmed on Harvard's location. I couldn't tell if they didn't, It looked very Harvard-esque.
That brings up a great point with him, is that he's not afraid of CGI, but he uses it to add on to things. So many of his movies just use like set extensions, or in this case, the Winklevoss twins. I'm curious how much of that is too. If they had to extend the Harvard campus or something, and if they did, we didn't notice. We weren't looking for it. He didn't call attention to it, which was really cool.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
One thing that surprised me just about the story itself was Zuckerberg in real life puts on this feeling to everybody else that he doesn't care, that he wears T-shirts and shorts and that's it. And he's just a laid-back dude who doesn't give a crap about anything. But in this movie, there's a couple lines later on where Eduardo freezes the bank account. And Zuckerberg calls him and says, I am not going back to that life. So it's very interesting and very telling that he's completely ego-driven. It's completely about how he's perceived. It's completely about his reputation and everything. And he puts on this facade of not caring, the shorts, T-shirt, the kind of rundown look, but on the other side of it, he cares more than anybody in the entire world about how he's perceived. And I think that's really telling,
Yeah. And it comes right from the very first scene, which is cool. I was thinking that a lot during watching it. Why? Why is he doing this? Why does he care? He's brilliant, cool. But why? And yeah, it stems back to the scene. I mean, you have this dialogue where his world is shattered because she points out exactly how she does perceive him and what he is doing to be an absolute jerk. And then later in the movie, he revisits her and gets his heart broken again. And then at the end of the movie, it's pointed out to him completely again that he's just trying so hard to be a jerk, whether it's a defense mechanism from trauma or something like that. And it's burning bridges, and it's creating toxic friendships and toxic business partnerships and deals and things like that. And it's hard to watch.
Yeah.
And it's hard to relate to, and it makes you wonder who you're rooting for as this weird, crazy, tumultuous journey occurs. Because it's not him a lot of the time.
Yeah. That business card, it makes me think about life. You know, the fact that he had Eduardo, his one friend, and they were building a crazy company together, and he had fun coding buddies that were hanging out with him and stuff. And he moved to California, and all these great things happened. But as soon as he chose Sean Parker, that's his last name.
Parker.
As soon as he chose Sean Parker, his life fell apart. You know, he fell in love with the idea of the "I'm CEO" bitch on his business card. Yeah. And at the very end, he literally loses his only friend in the entire world who helped build him this company because Zuckerberg betrayed Eduardo. And he gets taken out by security, and then he opens up the pack of cards that says "I'm CEO, bitch," and he's not happy. Yeah. He gave up his relationships, he gave up his friends for a company. And I don't know if he feels that way in real life, because it could be some drama that's added by the director. Right. But man, if that isn't some sort of reality, I mean, he completely betrayed his friend. How could it not be feeling like that?
For sure.
And
for sure.
At least for me, it does tie into real life and making sure I do right by people. It really does. It makes me think about that.
The relationships matter. Yeah. Equally and more than the business ventures. Yeah. It's very, very true. And that was one thing that kudos to Andrew Garfield. Gosh, what a performance there too. Because I'm guessing that at least on set, they were actually friends and they had to rip each other apart a little bit during this. But wow. I mean, that's why, like, to me, he was the main character. His arc was not only the most interesting and most varied, but he played it very, very well. And you were just watching him get ripped apart and having to go through this internal drama and external drama and everything that he's doing right. He's doing what's in his heart, and he's getting screwed. Yep. And it's, hard to watch.
Yeah, he put trust in somebody that he rightfully put trust in. You know, he's been around him for forever. He was roommates, pretty sure, and all that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he was roommates and everything with the guy. And to get absolutely screwed over for effectively money, for jealousy in the movie, realistically, that's what it was. Oh my gosh, what a terrible thing to watch. You know?
Well, and that was kind of a running theme, speaking of jealousy and everything too. I mean, obviously power is just power dynamics being kind of a big theme, but for me, even anger, because that was one thing that mentioning that Jesse Eisenberg played Zuckerberg as a very angry and very, vitriol-filled individual. And a lot of this was that. I mean, it was revenge stories all over the place in this movie, and showing that every time there was a revenge arc, it didn't end well for anyone. The Winklevoss twins. I mean, I guess they settled in the end, which, win or lose, I don't really know what you want to say there. But they were going down this road of revenge, essentially trying to do it right, and kind of not coming to a good end. Eduardo, his character getting screwed over overall too, and not necessarily in revenge, but when he pulled the money out, obviously it made it a hell of a lot worse.
Right.
Sean, everyone, just all of this anger fueled vitriol from every person, and showing how every time it went up in flames was crazy. And I think that kind of helped lead into the tension of the movie overall. The fact that, you're there sitting watching a 2 or 2.5 hour movie. I don't even know, because it was so good.
That's true. Yeah. I was not looking at my watch.
It did that. It went right by. I mean, I was thinking of times to try to go to the bathroom, and I didn't want to get up. So clearly it was worth sticking around, which is just, it's cool. And it goes to well-written characters and compelling story arcs and good direction and great acting. And it's no wonder it got the accolades it got, and why even 14 years later it holds up as well as it does. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We've touched a little bit on the CGI-ness of it. Would you like to dive a little deeper into that?
I mean, I don't know a ton about anything besides the Winklevoss twins. I know that it was one of the first times it's not called the volume, but essentially one of the rigs where you sit an actor inside of like a photo booth, a 360 photo booth.
Oh yeah, with all those cameras around them and the crazy lights, and they have that like skull cap to bring their hair back.
Yep. So they take like 3 or 4 different styles of images, everything from actual images for texture maps to like depth maps and things like that. And then they're able to remap, and they can relight and reposition the scan essentially that they've created digitally onto a person. So in rowing scenes, for example, that's hugely important because they can, face him sideways. They can film the scene practically, put some dots on the other actor who did great, also matching his twin brother,
Yes.
Josh. I don't remember his name, Josh something, but it's super cool, and so it held up. 14 years later, the first time you see the twins, it's the hallway shot, or maybe it's the first time they come and talk to Mark directly in the hallway.
I think he's got the earmuffs.
He does. So you could tell that either they weren't sure about digital hair or something. That one was pretty janky. He definitely was.
You know what's really funny? I didn't notice at all.
I noticed it right off.
I was
the bat,
even
and
like
looking for it.
I was
So-
even looking and I just didn't see it.
But, and that speaks to the direction, especially, and the fact that in every opportunity they could, they didn't use that tech.
Yeah.
But that he used it so wisely and so sparingly, and that a lot of the shots where they were, one behind the other had really shallow depth of field that they could hide it behind, or just every shot was positioned with such intention that they just didn't use it or used it so minimally. I was even looking at the shots where both of them are facing a situation, like when they're in England or talking with their dad, and everything's kind of spiraling for them, looking at their profiles and kind of what was replaced there. So it just was done so intelligently that it was cool. I mean, that it was a tech that was brand new for its time. It's been done a million times now, but it's new then, and it still holds up 14 years, it shows so much about how it was directed and executed.
Yeah, I would say as far as CGI goes in this movie, this is such a good example of why you need to do practical with CGI. A lot of times people say that CGI was bad or whatever, and I think a lot of the times it's just overused in a movie or used wrong. And in this movie, that's just not the case. They have the practical ones. I happen to know for a fact that the Harvard scene where they're talking to the president, that is purely Army Hammer getting his timing down perfectly.
Sitting in one chair,
Sitting in one chair.
having his lines read to him or him played back to himself. Yeah.
That is
And just great
100%.
acting.
Just 100% great acting. Makes you believe and not perceive the CGI there.
Just good planning.
So again, we already said praise to Army Hammer and the CGI artists. We can't forget them either. But it holds up. 14 years after release, it completely holds up.
Yeah.
They were some of my favorite characters. I do think that they got screwed over, you know?
Totally. They had the best intentions and they just,
Yeah, I know nothing about coding, but just say that it's not their code, but it's the exact same idea doing the same thing that you were effectively hired to do.
It's slippery, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's scummy. It's slimy.
Feel betrayed.
Yeah.
See, and I was thinking about the whole CGI thing and why would they go to the effort of this? I mean, because your average Joe, probably even more than your average Joe, wouldn't have any idea that they were twins, that they existed in the story. You could have, if you were taking enough artistic license with the story already, written it as a single character, written
That's
it as
true.
friends. And so I'm curious why the flex was there. That's just a whole nother thing. Excuse me, but it makes you wonder a little bit if it was like, well, we have some money in our budget, we could try this, or it's really important to me that they have to be twins to be able to be so similar. I'm trying to think of what their relationship was that merited them having to be twins, other than the fact that they, I guess, were actually twins.
Yeah, were they twins in real life?
Probably.
Yeah, I
And
don't
so,
know.
sure,
I
then
guess
if
in
you're
the
still
end
true-
credits thing said that they got the thing. So I think that might say that they're real. We're not
it-
fact checking right now, but
if
yeah.
you're taking so much artistic license from what we know to make the movie, so I'm curious.
Yeah.
He was just like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
That's a lot of extra work. I mean, it's sort of like when you think about Lord of the Rings when it was made versus The Hobbit, where in Lord of the Rings they built all these forced perspective table rigs, so then when the camera moves on its motion control rig, it keeps them in perspective. But then in The Hobbit, they just said, screw it, we're gonna do all green screen.
Gonna go crazy.
Yeah, and so it makes you wonder if this was just like, no, we're gonna do it right, or we're gonna,
Yeah. I find myself coming back to the story while we're talking. I just, for whatever reason, we reviewed Mufasa last week, and that's the first one we've done. And that one, there was a lot of stuff to talk about as far as the CGI, whether it made sense to be made, the story itself, but mainly the design of the characters. And in this, I mean, there's great acting. The music works so well. The story's written so so incredibly well. There's so much intention in all of that that the story sticks out as the big talking point for me every single time. And watching this multiple times, I can't help but think that this is just a movie I'm going to keep getting reminders of what to do in life and what not to do in life to try to maximize what happens in my life. Good, bad, emotional, relationships. This is I feel like a lesson movie for me.
It is. It has stakes. It has
It does.
it has consequences. Yeah. I think that's great. That's a great takeaway.
Yeah, and I think specifically the fact that we're business partners.
Yeah.
And they were business
there were a lot of
partners.
parallels there, believe me, I was thinking about it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good lesson at all times with friendships, with business partnerships, with family problems. A lot of good takeaways.
Yeah, I would say so.
What not to do.
Yes. Let's see. We talked about
So what's bad then? I think that's we've sung a lot of praises. If you were to change things, or if you were to sin anything,
this.
what would you say?
This is going to be a short section. I feel like.
So too.
I'm with you there.
Let's see. The name of the podcast is We Have
We Have
Notes,
Notes,
so we got to come up with two.
No notes. Where are my notes?
I think that it was very risky to go with so many scenes that it's really hard to hear the characters. I think that the fact that the movie itself was so good made those scenes work. If the movie wasn't as good or as executed as well or as poignant for its time, I mean, even today, Zuckerberg's still like on the news constantly.
Still relevant, yeah.
If any of the other things failed, those scenes I think would suck. So you can't criticize them because they work, you know. But that might be a criticism. It was just risk reward, and luckily they pulled it off. So it's not a note, you know. They did it. Even Justin Timberlake, usually he'd be just a distraction,
Yeah,
you know.
he was
and
great.
He did
was
great.
Exactly what he needed to be.
He was. I didn't think of him as Justin Timberlake. He played him in such a way, and especially Eduardo doing the fake, you know, threatening punch and seeing that, oh, he's just a coward.
Yeah.
He's just a horrible coward who is paranoid, who did stuff completely out of spite. That's the only reason he did Napster. That's crazy, you know? Seeing that that's what happened, even though there's this crazy celebrity playing him, you know, it's wild to see that. So there were a lot of risks taken, but my gosh, did they pay off? Yeah, as far as bad things in this movie, I can't really think, to be honest. Right now, nothing's coming to my mind. Do you have any?
I agree. The audio things were a risk that I think would have gone, maybe did go over most people's heads in terms of whatever intention was meant to be there. And I think it's so common in movies nowadays for things to be poorly mixed in audio land that so many people run with subtitles nowadays that it's hard to know. So in that way, I completely agree. Actually, that was one of my big qualms.
You know, as far as the big movie stuff goes, maybe that actually is a negative for the very simple fact that other movies tried to implement it.
Maybe, yeah.
And it
that's
started
fair.
a trend, and now those suck.
That's fair. They didn't understand why.
They didn't understand why, the purpose and the intentionality and the feeling that it generated for the characters in the time of the movie. People probably just said, well, you know, the Social Network did it, so we're going to do
If we
it.
make it quiet, they'll listen harder.
Right.
Okay.
So I'd say maybe it actually is a negative in
It
that.
might be.
I don't know.
But you can't decide that when you're making a movie, so
That's true. That's true.
it's difficult.
Well, in terms of the other things, I feel like this movie, maybe its initial cut was like 5 hours long, and the studio came in and they're like, okay, you got to trim a lot of stuff, and he's like, it was trimmed to the point where it was concise, it was buttoned up. I was trying to think of even like there was the scene of him filming the coders like sliding into the pool or on the zip line into the pool.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, that was kind of a weird thing. I was like, is he trying to put videos on here to like show you can do, you know, because in a lot of ways the movie mirrored the progression of the not only social media kind of at the time, but of Facebook and what was growing and what was popular. It kind of directly mirrored it the whole time, and how moments of the digital realm crept into moments of the physical one. I mean, like the whole conversation of, well, you didn't update your relationship status and that kind of thing.
Why are you single on Facebook? Your status says, "Oh, dude,
Says
that
that.
one like hurts me every single time." I feel like that
so-
might be one of the most poignant things
It's
that they
so
said in the
relevant,
whole
but
movie.
So petty, yeah.
Yes, because
Yeah.
it shows that people don't care about reality. The dude's busy. He just got the thing. Like, she's a crazy girlfriend, obviously. You know, that's portrayed in the movie. But the fact that that also is a thing that not only happened, but still happens, that
Yep. It's
not
still
clicking a
relevant.
button on a website can ruin a relationship today,
Yeah.
that's dumb.
See, and
That's
this
dumb,
just-
but it's
that just
real.
Goes to show that
Every conversation here mattered. And like going back to the zipline example, the reason it happened was so the chimney could break, so he would come over and check on them. And then
Right.
there you go. So every scene, even as obscure as some of them were, really mattered a lot. And you could tell that the movie was cut in such a precise way that seriously, every dialogue piece mattered, every visual mattered, even the rowing scene, which was not really important, like at all, except to show them losing. Was concise. It was a montage. It was very short. So every point mattered, and it was so intentionally done from start to finish. I can't.
You know,
I don't have notes. I'm sorry.
You did just
the
give
audio.
me you did just give me the inspiration for a note though,
Okay.
which was that I forgot that the Sean Parker thing. I mean, if it happened in real life this way, I'm cool with it. But that was so happenstance. Across
to
the
him.
street,
That's fair.
moving his friend, and they just happened to see it, and they came over because this egotistical maniac who's paranoid as hell was concerned about somebody. I guess that would be a note.
That's fair.
But you know, the tiny, tiny, tiny note.
That's a
and
tiny
list of
note because
very
they
good
needed
things.
to obviously get him there.
Back involved.
So, and I guess a text or Facebooking him that would be too
Well, I
lame
mean,
in a
maybe
movie.
maybe, yeah. I don't know. That's fair.
So yeah, I'll take that as a note. You know,
Sure.
that
I'll take
one it had to happen, but it was kind of a little forced, I would say. So it's a nitpick note, but there's at least one.
There's
So we got
one.
the music and we got the meeting Sean Parker again. We have notes.
There we go. Two. If we think of others, we'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
That was it. I don't know if we want to do categories. If you have other things to say, this movie was just concise and good, and it hit the spot.
I wouldn't mind talking about the impact that social media had on us. You know,
okay.
this movie is one about how it changed people's lives and how it destroyed others. And we, you know, we're both born in the 90s. We are 1900s. And this stuff all happened when we were going through middle school and high school. You know, we were right in the thick of it. Not college age, you know.
Even earlier than that.
Let's see, it came out in 2004.
4 was when it launched, according to this movie. So
No, I
elementary.
think that's when they were starting it. I thought that.
Starting it at Harvard. I don't know what the timeline was by the end of this movie.
Yeah.
Like when he was, because they were well enough established. It might have been like maybe about when the movie came out. Because
That's
the
what I'm
movie,
thinking.
It was 2010 when it came out. So if it was 2004, maybe 2007.
That's what I was thinking because iPhone was 2007, Instagram was like 3 years after that, Facebook was
would've been
before that.
Or elementary, like middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I got in high school in 2013 or so. So yeah, it started to happen when we were still really young, before either of us actually had iPhones or our own laptops or anything. But when we get into high school, it was in full force. Everybody was downloading it. We had heard about it, at least for me. I had heard about Facebook when I was in like 8th grade, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm a good little Catholic boy. I'm not going to do that. And then I got to high school and kind of almost got pressured into it. The social stuff that they're talking about when you're in an impressionable age like that, obviously made for college students to begin with, but when you're in high school and that happens, the social pressure is kind of nuts. And the fact that our lives for a time were kind of run on that. I guess I'll speak for myself, but there was a time where literally everybody that was one of my classmates was checking that relationship status every single day. Hey, did you see what so-and-so posted? Oh, there was this party that was going on. I can't believe that person was there because they were in the background. They shouldn't have been there. People got in trouble because they posted things on Facebook. Friendships got created and then destroyed because of Facebook. It's a really wild thing to have kind of grown up in an impressionable age and seeing what happened with, I guess you could call it the golden era, where everybody was hopping on, where it kind of was where life was happening. I don't think we're there anymore. I really think Facebook has taken a nosedive, specifically since COVID. There was a lot of things that Facebook chose to do that really just killed it for everybody. But yeah, I think that it's a really interesting thing growing up with it because a lot of our interactions turn to Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram. I think those are the three big ones, at least here, that were kind of the where to be with all the social stuff. Yeah. How was it for you?
Yeah, Facebook was a fairly similar journey. I mean, I lived in a household that had dial-up until like the late, maybe the early 20 teens. Like it was a long time. And so my run-ins with Facebook were like at the library. And like you said, I didn't have a phone until I was in college. My very first phone was college. I had an iPod Touch. And I do remember having a Facebook account through high school. And so that would have been, 20 teens. It was pretty well established by then. I honestly don't remember Facebook being even part of my like daily lexicon in terms of, those Catholic school years, middle school and elementary school. I don't remember it being relevant. And I think that was probably mostly to do with my lack of internet access at home and probably for the best. But you're totally right in terms of its impact in high school, even for us when I don't even know when Facebook's peak was or is or whatever. Probably about when we were in high school, I would estimate. It was definitely relevant. It was before Instagram because I don't think Instagram came about to like 2014.
I think it was about 2013, 2014 when it kicked off and then just exploded afterwards.
I remember Instagram being a blip on the radar, but it was still Facebook pretty heavily. Snapchat was a world I didn't dabble in myself until later, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, Facebook being a way to communicate with family, the relationships thing is super relevant. I mean, it's during high school, it was a topic of every new relationship to be like, when are we going to be official on Facebook?
Yes. When are we going to be doing that? Everybody needs to know. Yeah. Today's the day. You got to post it at the same time. Do you remember that?
Differently from them, then heaven forbid.
Why isn't your profile? Your status says that, but your profile picture doesn't have me in it. What's going on? Are you mad at me?
Remembering how to coordinate that, and
I definitely did that in a relationship or two.
This is a weird thing to think back on because at least for my life, it's not that way anymore. Not even close. But I remember there were other things too that really changed life. I know that my mom, when she got Facebook, she thought it was going to be really good for forever. We all kind of thought that.
To like catalog your memories.
You can now put them out there. It's going to be stored for free. And you're basically going to be able to go through a timeline of your life and show your grandkids or your kids and stuff. So she put crazy amounts of photos out there. And she still does to this day. But it's interesting to see that Facebook basically doesn't have that reputation anymore.
Fair.
You know?
Fair.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And it's interesting seeing kind of the ripple effect of those of us who grew up with it at a younger age and how it's more for us versus people who are, our parents and things using it kind of in the way you see in the movie where it is a blog or it's a place to dump photos and things like that. Yeah, it's adapted a lot. And you mentioned there briefly, it's kind of impressive that it's still free. That, there are ads on it now, certainly, but it's not insane. I mean, it's hasn't changed much from how it was pictured in this movie.
I would disagree.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason I would disagree is because back in the day, you used to be able to. Do you remember that if you had let's say a lower friend count or whatever, you could scroll and reach the bottom of your Facebook feed? Do you remember that?
I don't.
So there was a time where all that you could see is what was posted in the last week from your friends or the pages you followed, and that is it. I think that was the golden era because your interests are what you saw. Your friends' posts, you saw all the time. There was literal social interaction that happened. Nowadays, it's completely changed to where it's an algorithm that decides what you're going to see. Hey, you don't follow 5-minute crafts, but you watched one of their videos once.
True.
Your entire feed is 5-minute crafts that have nothing to do with anything.
That's fair. I would say, though, that at the heart of it, at least, it still carries a lot of the same characteristics. I mean, a lot of the things, the social interactions you can still have. I mean, I don't know what its original mission statement is, but from the lens of the movie, a lot of it's still there. I mean, I think that Facebook is still one of the most relevant messaging platforms for people.
I think Facebook Messenger is. I don't think Facebook is, though.
Right. I guess I would glump them as the same. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just since they're separate, like even their domains are separate. It's a separate app that you download. I at least separate them because I don't think you have to have a Facebook account to have Messenger. as far as I know.
I have no idea.
Yeah. So I think that Messenger is still a really good app. It's funny that they didn't completely integrate it. I think they might have actually back in the day. I think it might have been a part of Facebook.
I remember there not being a Messenger app at one point. Yes.
forever.
So,
Yeah.
well, yeah, and then you can obviously tie in their purchase of Instagram and all that. But it just in terms of the scope of the movie, I don't know. I mean, if you're just drawing parallels back to the program, I don't know. I thought that it is kind of interesting that of all the programs that have evolved as much as they have, at least at the heart, I'd say it's still fairly similar. Yeah, it's been monetized, but
Yeah,
honestly, I think we all knew it had to be.
Yeah, no, monetization's one thing. The never seeing your friends' posts is another.
True.
You know,
Only seeing the monetized stuff.
it used to be something where you post something on Facebook and you know everybody's going to see it. It was a great, easy way to update people. Specifically, one that's huge and is really relevant in my life right now is an engagement announcement. As soon as somebody posted an engagement announcement, engagement photos, everybody knew.
Come out of hiding.
It comes out of hiding. Everybody knew you saw it because it was a huge thing. The relationship status changed, which bumped it to the top of everybody's feed. Nowadays, you know, Miranda and I, we just got engaged, you know, a few months ago, back in 2024. We posted it out there, and a few people saw it. Probably our closest relatives, my aunts, my mom, other people that I interact with daily in real life. But the vast majority of people that are just that one step out, maybe friends that moved away or something like that, no idea. So it doesn't get shared with your network. Your network is effectively who you actually interact with, and anybody who might be a friend or an acquaintance that you don't actively go out and like and comment and all that stuff, they're basically put to the side as if it's a page you don't follow. So at least for me, it's not really that good of a way to keep updated with people. I occasionally see things from friends, but the vast majority is algorithm thinks that, you know, late 20s white male likes this thing, or it's an AI image with a crazy amount of bots at the bottom. That's another thing too.
Like a Jesus in a sandcastle.
Yes, Jesus in a Sandcastle. That video. Oh my Lord.
Just go watch some Danny Gonzalez. We'll go down that route.
Yes, that was a funny one.
You know what Facebook is great for? I like dog food. Dog food's really cool. My dogs really like. We're gonna get some ads here. We're gonna get served some dog food ads from Facebook. Be scrolling and just dog food.
Yeah, you won't be able to see an important life change. Somebody's injured in the hospital or something, but you'll
hey,
get dog
you'll
food.
get served dog
You'll
food.
get AI Jesus and dog food.
Yep, which Facebook gold.
So I would argue, we could just disagree about it, but I would argue that Facebook is not even close to what it used to be. I would even argue that maybe Instagram is closer to what Facebook used to be in the social interactions. I feel like, granted, I don't think a lot of people post on Instagram that much because that's become more video. But if I do see more updates from friends and actual people and acquaintances on there, especially because of the stories. Whereas on Facebook, it's just, I mean, if I turned this back on and, you know, scrolled through it for a second, I don't think I would see a life update from anybody for forever. And it could also be a lack of posting. But
yeah, there's a lot of bloating.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one thing that did remain constant though is a lot of people's affinity to call it the Facebook.
the Facebook.
I actually thought that
It was
was
a funny thing. I knew that. I think that it was called the Facebook at the beginning. But I guess I didn't realize that's kind of where the whole thing, the whole, not joke, but the whole misconception came from, where you talk to someone who, you know, tends to be older.
All right,
they
Sean to
It's on the
Facebook.
Facebook.
And that makes more sense now. I thought that was funny. So there you go. That can still linger in perpetuity.
Yeah,
Is
that
people potentially calling it the Facebook.
that one line from Sean Parker about
Yeah,
drop
just
the. It's cleaner that way. I hate that so much. It's great in the movie. It serves his character so well. So it's not a dog of David Fincher, even Justin Timberlake or whatever. But it made me hate him so much.
Mm-hmm.
He's so egotistical to be able to just tell this guy who created this thing that the Napster guy couldn't do,
Mm-hmm.
to just be like, yeah, I'm right. Look at me,
Mm-hmm.
you know? His ego is just getting fueled, and it just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
In a good way. That's what the movie's supposed to do.
In an interesting way, it was a nice parallel for what you were not seeing inside of Jesse Eisenberg's head. It was like a nice visual manifestation of what was happening, because they jibed so closely with each other from the onset, that he provided a really great visual representation of likely what was happening, to the extent that physical things began to manifest for Jesse Eisenberg, for the business cards. When he looked at it, he just didn't even recognize it anymore, that it had gotten that bad, that this virus had ingrained itself in, and that he didn't even know who to talk to when Sean, Justin Timberlake's character, got busted at the party, when everything was going wrong. He was like, I'm going to call someone. Hey, Bobo.
Welcome, Bobo.
There will be occasional
The Lion
cats
King.
in these. Just so you know,
Yes.
this is Bobo.
Goodbye, Bobo.
Goodbye, Bobo. So I thought that was really kind of cool, and really kind of the best thing for his character, for the Sean character to be, was the visual, antithesis of recklessness and big-headedness and all of that, it was kind of cool to see how it manifested. So
Yeah, do you think that Sean Parker is what Mark Zuckerberg thinks he is? The playboy, stick it to the man, cool guy that
I
can
think it's
do
what
anything?
he wanted to be.
Right.
I think the allure of the power that he held as that character was enticing to him.
Yeah,
That he had control over women and situations and power and money and influence and everything. And that was something that Zuckerberg, as where he started from and the way he interacts with people, just was never the case, and he could never really master that. And so he got rid of the person who was in his way, got rid of his business partner who was telling him otherwise, and followed this kind of sphere of influence that was this guy, that was Sean Parker, and tried to emulate. It didn't work out.
Yeah, he needed Eduardo to tell him that he's not that guy.
Yeah. Sorry, you're not that guy.
You're not that guy, Zuck. One thing that was something I didn't appreciate at the beginning was, you recognize the timestamps at the bottom of the screen when they started coding? Basically,
I
there
wasn't looking that hard, honestly.
No worries. I started paying attention to that because it's something that I guess I didn't notice. But at the beginning of the movie, there's this whole scene where basically they are not going to the Phoenix Club for their first party of the year, the first party of the fall semester. And the Phoenix Club starts partying, and you cut back with the same music going to Zuckerberg and all of his guys, and he's all pitiful and spiteful, and it says like 10:37 or whatever is when he starts. Later, it basically goes and he's coding and he posts, and then it shows the website live and all these people interacting with it. That's like by 2 a.m. So only like 4 hours later, it's live and people are interacting with it. Then 2 hours after that, they basically cut to this call from, the security director of Harvard and or cybersecurity, saying that it's going down. And that's at 4 a.m. So in only 6 hours or less,
He was able to sabotage that much.
he was able to, out of spite, take a denial from his ex-girlfriend, talk crap about her, make a website, and crash Harvard's website as well in 6 hours.
Kind of impressive. So
It's impressive.
That's one way to deal with grief
It's great.
and rejection and loss. It's just
Most people
Turn
drink,
around
he
is
codes.
sabotage.
I guess he did drink and
That's
code,
fair.
but yeah.
That's fair.
and it's great attention to detail.
Yeah, don't drink, code.
It's like I'm slightly intoxicated right now. So cool. Do you want to jump into categories?
Yeah, I think we can do that now. Our categories, my phone's off right now, so if
right.
you want to pull that up.
One
But
minute.
while he's pulling that off, we basically, for those who don't know, we give scores to every single movie that we review. Daniel gives his score, I give my score. We then combine those at the end and come up with a rating out of 5 stars that you can find on Letterboxd. We are OTW Video on Letterboxd. You can see all of our reviews there. Right now, it's just Mufasa, The Lion King. And after this one goes live, we'll have The Social Network.
Absolutely.
So our categories
These are our
are...
categories, and we'll go through each one here shortly. So uniqueness, cinematography, story, execution, immersion, and emotional connection. So starting with uniqueness. How unique is The Social Network?
Extremely. This is an extremely unique movie. The premise is extremely unique. As far as founders of social media companies, who do we know the name of? Mark Zuckerberg.
Yep.
I don't know who founded Instagram.
I don't either.
I don't know who did Pinterest.
Yeah.
I don't know who did Snapchat. We know Mark Zuckerberg. That's about it. So to have the premise of effectively a celebrity who made his name by coding and creating a crazy website for everybody to social network, literally the one that made that happen. You know, MySpace existed, but this took it to the next level. The premise is extremely unique. It is hard to fault uniqueness. Gosh, even in the style, you could maybe say the lighting wasn't unique. It wasn't bad, and it was very well done. Maybe just not unique lighting. Is that it? Because the music was unique, the acting was unique, the premise is unique, the editing's unique. It's a very unique movie.
I agree. Yeah, putting on my 2010 glasses, even to dive into was the way the story was told unique for that time. Yeah, 100%. This was definitely, you could tell this was a pioneering movie into that kind of genre. Because we've seen several jumping between litigation and real life or whatever back and forth in that way. And not to say this was the first to do it, but clearly it did it so effectively that it kind of has sparked other movies that you could think of in more recent memory. So I think in uniqueness, you're right. The story was perfectly unique. It's about someone in real life for the most part, with events for the most part that were real. So yeah, definitely a unique movie. So cinematography.
Yeah. You want to start on this one?
Sure.
I thought the cinematography was pretty classic David Fincher. It had, you mentioned lighting, it had his fingerprints all over it. And the only time that the cinematography was notably different or really interesting or just, fun was the rowing scene. That you had a lot of changes in shutter speed that gave kind of this faster.
Yeah, when the oars came out.
Yeah, you had the miniature effect coded across everything. So you had this crazy tilt shift look to a lot of the wides. You had a lot of really dramatic close-ups, slow motion, very stylistically different from the rest of the movie. But then across the rest of the movie, it had kind of his signature everything. I mean, a lot of locked off, very intentionally framed shots, and his general pretty shallow depth of field, the kind of the dingy greenish yellow tinted lighting and aesthetic. It was a Fincher movie, 100%. So.
Yeah, the cinematography was absolutely spectacular. We talked about how it was non-intrusive for pretty much the entire movie. So you were engaged with the characters, the dialogue, and the plot, which is what mattered. And then when it came to the stylistic one, the only really stylistic one, I guess you could say the opening bar scene was lit stylistically, wasn't really shot stylistically, which is fine. But yeah, the rowing scene, that again. The Social Network is the best rowing movie ever made, by far.
True.
Cinematography was fantastic. Not distracting, engaging when it needed to be, and overall just extremely well shot.
Entirely story serving.
Entirely story serving.
A little bit of indulgence, but entirely story serving.
Yes, indulgence where you wanted it too.
Exactly.
Connected.
But
for
never
sure.
distracting. And there were a lot of moments where he revisited familiar shots, which is really smart, especially when you're jumping back and forth. Like one that comes to mind is, I don't remember why they were going up and down the staircase, but Zuckerberg goes up the staircase, I think, to go to his dorm. And then later on, Andrew Garfield's character goes up the stairs. Eduardo goes up the stairs to visit his dorm for whatever reason. Shots like that. It was the exact same, just kind of pan up shot, this nice symmetrical stairwell. That's one thing I think Fincher does really well, and something this movie needed was the groundedness of never making it so crazy that, I mean, sure, break the 180-degree rule all you want. You're a big Hollywood director. Do what you want to do. But never to this extent where you felt lost in time and
Never.
space. Like the moments between the lighting and, obviously the sets that you're revisiting, but the way things were shot were familiar and were grounded. So, cool. Story.
Yeah, the story itself, the fact that it was told from both ends, basically coinciding with the horrible thing that happened as its climax. I love that style. I'm a sucker for it at this point. I guess that might be the only non-unique thing, is that had been done before The Social Network. As
Just
far
the
as I
ending?
understand.
Is that what you mean?
Not the ending, but the structure. As far as I remember, Memento was told in a very similar way, where you saw the ending and you saw the beginning, and they close in together to
Right.
tell the finale.
I'm guessing there's plenty of other examples too, but just in terms of like cultural relevance, yeah, Memento's a good example.
Yeah.
Definitely a formula that's so hard to get right.
It's true.
And I think Fincher has probably the highest success rate because almost every movie he does, him and Nolan kind of do that.
I would agree.
Most of Nolan's. Yeah,
We can talk about the execution on it in that other one.
in that criterion.
But as far as the story goes, I mean, well told. Very well told. It might be maybe too dramatic for real life. That could be a criticism of it. But as far as an entertainment piece, which is what movies are, this was not a documentary. Let's remember that. Oh my gosh, I was engaged the entire time. I was excited. It was fun following what was being said and the visuals directing you. I thought the story was awesome. Besides how it was shot and how it was told, there was also just very simply what happened in the story. And the fact that there's all of these human elements, like I mentioned, for such a robotic human, mind-blowing to me, to be honest. I mean, you do think of Zuckerberg as a kind of a robot, and people even call him a lizard man or whatever. This is how humans drink water. Everybody knows that one.
Right.
And in this movie, it's not the happy, the just sad, all that stuff. It's a slight psychopath to it, a slight psychopath of you see the betrayal, the conniving, the dramatic planning ahead to be able to get what he wants. He chose the wrong thing, but he does get what he wants in the end of it. And seeing all of that stuff from what we all assume is a pretty robotic person is honestly a little bit terrifying. And so the storytelling, what actually happened, is very, very good. So I really like the story.
Agreed. It told a unique story. It told it very, very well. I wouldn't have done anything differently. I was invested. I knew what was going on. I liked it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That story was good with me. I have no qualms there. So, okay. Execution then.
Yeah, execution. Execution gets a high marks for me. To, like we mentioned, to be able to pull off that style of showing the beginning, showing the ending, showing even other parts of the middle
Cutting
that all
between
culminate.
two timelines, yeah.
Yes, and to be able to have all the characters that all have unique personalities, the different twins that have different personalities and looks that you can actually tell them apart when they're not talking. Execution was out of this world. The execution gets extremely high marks for me. If there was anything, again, the only real qualm with that would be the fact that the getting back with Sean Parker was a little too circumstantial. It felt a little weird. Had to happen, but it felt a little weird. So that's the only point where execution might get a slight tick, but that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was, I also couldn't think of a better way to execute it. I mean, if I were to go tell a Facebook biopic kind of thing, I don't think I would be able to do it in a more interesting way. This really was a really good, interesting way, where you have really interesting characters, you have really interesting circumstances, and telling it through the lens of, I don't know if the trial was necessarily real, or how it was conflated in the movie, but having something like that being the narrative driver was really, really cool. So I really appreciated that they were able to jump back from those two, dramatic things and do so effectively. So yeah, I think generally the execution was really, really good. It was unique, and I think for its time and even still, and I appreciated it. I think it was driving for a story that could have been really uninteresting. So
Yeah, absolutely.
cool. Immersion.
Yeah, immersion. I was not pulled out ever. There's not much more to say than that. I was invested in the characters. For my style of watching kind of movies that I really enjoy, the ones that you have to think about and pay attention to, that also don't go too far, that you can pay attention to, really engage me. So immersion is, again, something that there's not much that I can pick apart. And the fact that it also pertains to something that we lived through. I do kind of think of the evolution of Facebook as almost an event in and of itself. There's different big things that happened and how it changed our lives and everything. So growing up with that in a very influential time in my life, yeah, I was immersed like crazy.
Yeah.
I think so too. I'm with you there. The only marks against immersion would be kind of those audio things where you visibly were pulled out, not visibly, you knew you were pulled out because you had a hard time hearing what was going on. Artistically, I admire it, but I don't think it was the wisest choice considering such a dialogue heavy movie. Outside of the fact that, well, maybe the director just literally didn't even want you to hear what was going on, in which case, fine, but still pulled you out to make you question it. It's sort of like bad VFX or like VFX that are not even bad, but are just not right. And you're pulled out just enough to question them, and then you can get pulled back in. So if that was the intention, great. I think that it was so sparingly done in this movie that it was distracting, that if it were even more, maybe.
So you're thinking that for the immersion that they should have gone harder on that style and it would have fit better? Is that what you're saying?
It could have been sort of the case of, in a movie where a character like zones out and you get kind of the ringing comes in and it gets muffled, something like that, where it's a clear intention from the director that it's happening. That being said, I also don't want to be force-fed that all the time. So I would love to know what the direction was, but that would be my only mark really there. And that's because it made me realize, or it made me question it, the intention of the movie, not the intention of the characters within the movie, but the intention of the movie. Therefore, I'm watching a movie. So that would be really the one gripe there. But beyond that, I mean, outside of me like hating a lot of the characters or what they were doing, and then just having that response, I don't think that's pulling me out, but me stepping away and being like, these people suck, or like what they're doing sucks. And thinking, having that reflective moment while the movie is happening of, boy, I'm glad that this isn't happening to me, or boy, I hope this doesn't happen to me, or, those lesson moments. I don't think that hurts immersion, but that would be my only thought was the active like disgust that you kind of felt with some of the things going on and the unfairness of it all, that gives you a response in real time, which I don't think that's a knock against immersion, but I actually think that's more marks to it. It's just yeah,
I think that's fair to be able to say that it took me out, but it added more over here. Right. Things can do that. The teeter-totter can go.
Right. No, that's a great way to put it. That was exactly it. I don't think that was a mark against immersion. It just it was part of immersion. I think in a positive way, but certainly a way that takes you out of the movie to bring you back stronger. I think it's a great way to put it. So, emotional connection.
I'm going to have to talk in two different ways. There's the first time watching it, and then there's the fifth time watching it. Okay. I think it actually has been 5. The first time watching it, oh my God. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this, I wanted to delete Facebook. I was pissed. I was like, holy crap, this is the dude that founded this thing that has like changed everybody's lives and, broken people up or made people find each other, if we're going positive, or made people invest time or whatever. That's the guy? Really? That's the founder? This betrayal, backstabbing son of a gun who's kind of a psychopath? Like, that sucks. So first time watching it, completely emotionally invested, and it like affected me. And I was like, I'm not using Facebook that much ever again. Fifth time watching it, I would say still pretty emotionally invested. I think that the fact that I kind of don't really give a crap about Facebook anymore has something to do with it. I think that all the stuff that they've done in the real world in 2024, 2025, the AI generated images that just have thousands of bot comments, and that's what gets force fed to you, really has changed how I feel about it. And I'm just kind of tuned out. There's not life-changing things anymore because it's just a kind of a thing that's there and it's free. So why not get rid of it? And also Facebook Marketplace. If they would just get the location right, I would be sold. Anyway, that's the Facebook Marketplace is about the only good thing, and Messenger is pretty good too. But I would say fifth time watching it, not crazily emotionally invested. So for rating, I'm probably going to go on the first time because I think that's more fair. For this one, that feels more fair. Other movies, maybe the fifth time feels more fair. But for this one, I'm going to rate it based off of my first time watching it.
Sure.
I can't say that I've ever had an emotional connection to Facebook. Certainly it's been a part of my life as it has a lot of us. it's, to me, it's always been kind of a tool, and like with most social media things, there's kind of this inherent factor that you're always understanding of it to kind of suck you in, that you always are kind of pushing against, but always kind of saying yes to. So I wouldn't say that I have an emotional connection to Facebook. So in that way, just talking in terms of the characters, yeah, I certainly felt for them. I certainly felt the emotions, I think, that were directed for me to feel, and felt so strongly enough to serve the story. I mean, the fact that really by the time the movie ended and you have at least the one time where Zuckerberg can show he's a human, I still hated him. And I think that's the goal. And really every character along that, and maybe this is something that you've experienced by watching it so many times, or can experience watching it more times, is that you can kind of follow a different character each time you watch it, because they're all interlaced through the whole story. And so if you're watching it from the perspective of the twins, then yeah, you're feeling empathy, you're feeling sorrow somewhat for them. If you're watching it from Eduardo's side too, he has easily the most interesting story arc, and it's rough because he comes at it with the best of intentions and the right way. You watch it from Zuckerberg's thing and just hate him the whole time, essentially. It kind of fun to see that. And so I think in that way, because every character is told so well, and they all have their own intentions and their own arcs going so perfectly in tandem, that I think the emotional connection was strong the whole time for me, that I felt for the characters what I needed to feel, whether it was disgust or happiness or whatever. So, yeah.
Perfect. That was the last category, right? Last category out of the 6 that we have. Right now, we're going to take some time and actually give scores to each of those categories, and we'll come back and give you the final score for The Social Network, and we'll be back like that. Okay, so our scores have been, well, we've written our scores. We'll start with uniqueness.
All right, I gave it a 5. I thought it was a perfectly unique concept. I enjoyed it.
I gave it a 5 as well. Let's move on to cinematography.
I gave it a 4. I didn't think it was the most visually interesting movie in the world. I've seen Fincher do more interesting things that don't detract from the story. I don't think, when I think of it as just like this lump sum of color and shots, the fact that I can't really think of stuff that stands out visually makes me a little sad. So I'll say 4 in that way.
Makes sense to me. I really, really have a soft spot for movies that make the cinematography not distracting, but I also have to leave room for something that is just beyond, where there's that thing that sticks out in your brain. So I gave it 4.7. Thought it was really good, but there was something that's just like, there's not that one shot.
Yeah. I thought there could have been a little bit more, and I don't think it would have hurt anything if there was.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay.
On to story.
Story, I gave it a 5. Like we discussed, it's kind of a one-of-a-kind story, and it's told well.
Absolutely. I gave it a 4.7. This is probably the 5th time watching coming out, where I just wanted, I don't know, it's excellent. It got a 4.7 out of me, but just like leaving that little bit of room for those perfect movies. I can't really substantiate it. I gave it a very high score to compensate for that, but not a perfect 5, 4.7 for me.
Okay. We've got Execution.
Execution, gave it a 5. Yeah? Gave it a 5. I couldn't think of anything except for that one scene, and I'm not going to take points off for it. Thinking about it more, the execution is a 5.
Okay. Excellent. I gave it a 4.5. And that's mainly because it has to go more for the mainstream digestibility of Fincher films. And I think that those things would have been big old weird question marks, creative question marks for majority of the crowd. For me personally, the fact that it was a little bit of a question mark, to be like, was that creatively the best choice? Makes me question the execution just a bit. So that's what I went with. So Immersion.
I got a 4.5. Yeah, I gave it a 4.5. This is the first time watching it, me sticking out, is those scenes where everything was too loud. First time watching it, it was very hard to hear. And it's like leaning in and like, wait, what does that have to do with this? 5th time watching me is like, yep, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So 4.5, because you have to see it the first time to love it and be able to watch it 5 times. And if I didn't like it the first time, like I think some people didn't because of that, Immersion's only a 4.5. Still amazing score, but 4.5.
Okay. I went a little bit lower with a 4. Main reason was that was also the speaking to the somewhat general crowd. There was a lot of information in this movie. Me as an actual first time watcher, someone who tends to be pretty good at watching and mostly understanding what's going on with movies. Even I had moments where I really had to pick up and pay attention. And so I could see how that could kind of lose the immersion. For me, if anything, that makes me more invested, but I know that could lose a lot of people. And so when it came to my immersion, there were only a few times where I thought myself having to rethink a scene, and then a scene was actively happening during that time that I was missing a little bit because I was having to rethink a scene. So I think that lost the immersion a little bit, was just the sheer bulk of information they had to get through that you had to digest at the same time they delivered it to you. And so as a first time watcher, that would be fixed on a second time watch. So I think that's why immersion lost a little bit.
For sure.
Okay. Emotional connection.
Gave it a 4.5. Again, it's another one where there's a high score because we lived through it, but not a perfect score. It's not something that sticks out at me and like, you know, it's a good reminder movie for things, but there are other movies that I know I have a deeper emotional connection. So that's why I left that extra half a star so that I can use that for the other movies.
Okay. I gave it a 4.2, which is oddly specific. I didn't think it was quite to the extent. I personally was not so emotionally invested in every person. I think that was by design in the way that a lot of them are meant to be jerks and you're not really supposed to be able to relate to them, but like you said, take more of a lesson out of it. And so I think in that way, it didn't go down to a 4, that there was still some validity to that. So I was emotionally connected, I think, in the way that I needed to be. I can't say I felt personally for a lot of these characters because they were so hard to feel that way. And maybe in that way that it would need to deserve a higher score because that was the design, but I don't know. That's just how I felt. So cool. So my total was 4.45. So
Very nice.
Yeah.
4.45.
4.45.
Mine's 4.73. The Social Network, we've given you some notes, well, 2 of them, and your final rating is 4.59. I believe that rounds to a 4.5 on Letterboxd. So yeah, 4.5 stars. So really solid movie.
That's a good one.
It's a really good score. Our specific, of course, is 4.59. So we liked it just a little bit more than 4.5. Letterboxd only has 0.5 increments. But yeah, 4.5.
The nearest half star.
The
Excellent.
nearest half star.
Cool. All right. 4.5.
4.5.
That's our highest rating out of our 2.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get a leaderboard at some point, and we'll have them listed there. But so far, Social Network takes the lead. Mufasa is just below. Thank you guys so much for watching this. If you stuck all the way through here, go ahead and subscribe or share with one of your friends. Let us know what you think of the Social Network, or if you think Facebook is any good these days.
Or a movie you want us to watch.
That's true.
If there's something specific, let us know.
Absolutely. Well, that's pretty much it for this podcast. We'll see you guys next week, and we'll be watching something else.
Excellent. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you so much. Night.